You're on.
It's about 6:31. We're going to open up this meeting. This is audio and video recorded. It apparently is not going to be live at the moment anyway, but it will be put on Channel 9 eventually, and it will also be uploaded to YouTube. Could we all please stand for the pledge of allegiance? Continue to remain standing.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing, please.
I wish to mention the passing of Madeline Pelletier, a longtime resident of Dayton, and in her memory, I'd ask for a moment of silence, please. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a little test to see if you were paying attention. Remain standing. So this is a continuation of the Lane Field hearing regarding the crosswalk. I'm going to have first I'm going to have the town administrator give a short summary of a letter that she had written, and then I'm going to have the chairman of the Parks and Recreation speak. I'm going to ask the board, the selectmen, any member, if you have any questions regarding this, and then everybody's going to have an opportunity to speak. But, town administrator, please.
Sure, and I'm going to refer to a plan, so if you're interested, there's copies of this plan, if you want one. Feel free to,
Can we take one?
Yes.
That's it?
Yes. Sure, of course it is. Good evening. So a handful of you were here last meeting where we talked about Lanefield and putting in a crosswalk, and as part of that discussion, a lot of speeding concerns arose. And I personally didn't feel comfortable putting in a crosswalk where there were so many unknowns about speeding. So we took a field trip, we had a curbside meeting. Mr. Rhines was there, Commissioner Rhines, in his capacity as Park and Rec Chairman. Mr. Chairman Pacheco, ADA Coordinator Jonathan Gale, myself, and Highway Superintendent Tom Ferry, and the two chiefs. We met and devised a plan that we think is a happy medium. It does not involve placing a crosswalk on the road. We actually devised to move a parking area inside where the playground actually is. So that's what this plan is. The street is kind of in the middle. We've done some immediate precautions as well. We ordered, thank you, Mr. Rhines, we ordered playground ahead signs, and they're in, they just need to be installed. We've increased enforcement, which is really just the running theme of the day for us in the area. And we really want to take away from encouraging people to park on the street. So the signs that allow on-street parking are going to be removed. If this plan, if this is what you end up voting on. If we do have to do a plan, it will go through to the planning board under site plan review. Major or minor is going to be their discretion and determination. My other recommendations in this memo, this write-up, is that you consider redoing the sidewalks on that stretch. They're pretty subpar. They don't do their work for pedestrian safety. They're too close to the road. There's not enough of a step up. So they do need to be redone. We do want to increase and continue the enforcement with the police department and potentially selling off, if this goes through, selling off the parking area that's across the street and potentially using those funds for improvements on the land or even to fund the sidewalk project.
In addition to planning, it probably has to go with conservation also. So, Mr. Rhines.
I just want to elaborate on what the town administrator just mentioned. People don't know me out there. My name is Timothy Rhines, as Chairman of the Park Recreation Commission. My fellow Commissioner, Mr. Roser, is here in the audience this evening. Just have to mind my mechanical drawing skills. I tried to teach them a little bit. But it's pretty self-explanatory, as the town administrator stated, that with these drawings that you see is that we went down Mr. Ferry, and what we'd like to do is save the lot across the street for now, and then it could be potentially sold at public auction. That would alleviate the need to put a crosswalk across the street. And what we'd have to do, if we did have to put a crosswalk in, the sidewalk itself, it has to be risen along with the berm. Then we have to cut the berm out and then install the concrete patio along with the steel diamond plate that would be required. So to alleviate that problem, we thought that the residents who live in the area can look at the drawing And we're proposing to put parking along the northwest corner of the parking area itself with a few handicap spaces closer to the ball field and to the equipment area. So that would be it would alleviate a lot of their problems for people to get there if they needed to go to the ball field itself or to the equipment that's also there in the field. And if there were this potentially to go through, we would also extend the fence in certain areas so that way there would be no contact. It would be not close enough for people to park, so the kids would be away from where the parking would be. So that would be our main situation with public safety. We're proposing approximately less than 20 parking spaces, which would not require a major site plan review. I think it would, again, alleviate that problem because you would have your gates, you would drive through, speed limit signs, they may be reduced. That's up to what the town fathers want to do in that situation there. But this is just preliminary. This is not concrete. So this could possibly be tweaked between now and the decisions made to vote on this. So this is just a preliminary plan. I have nothing further to add to this. We have Mr. Rosa come up and say a few words if you like.
Thank you, Tim. So I have no data regarding the safety down there, but I did spend a little time in the area and watch some of the traffic go by. And I don't think it's, unless a chief of police is here and wants to correct me in this or someone else, I don't think it's an issue where you have cars going by at 100 miles an hour or 80 miles an hour. Some people clearly might be exceeding the 30-mile-per-hour limit down in that area, but it's a very short run from the ballpark down to where they have to make a left or a right, so that's a natural inhibitor to any real speeding. So not that, clearly we want to do something about speeding, but I don't think it's perhaps the monster that some of us might think it is. I have a lot of reservations about giving up an existing parking lot, particularly until such time as we resolve the parking lot that's being proposed here. I have some reservations about tearing up the grass area. I think this parking lot proposed in what is now current, the northwest corner, could be left in its current state. There are a number of lots that are used from time to time for events, and the lawns seem to hold up well to the traffic over time. So I have some concerns about changes, but I think we're headed in the right direction. So I'm anxious to hear from some of the residents in the area. I have not heard from everybody, of course, but thank you for giving me a moment.
Just so everybody knows, the police chief could not make it tonight, so he's unavailable. So that's why he's not here tonight. Does any member of the board have any concerns or questions they would like to ask either Mr. Ryan or
I asked most of mine last meeting, excuse me, but I do have one, and this is for anybody who can answer. Are there ever events where there have been maybe a need for more than 20 cars? I guess my concern is, my concern is not having, I guess I share Mr. Rose's concern about, and I know this is down the road, not having that extra parking lot across the street. I guess that's one of my concerns. But that's the only issue I have, Mr. Chairman.
Mrs. Goulart?
As you said, Mr. Ryan, it's not drawn to scale, and it looks like there's a big space between those 14 and those 3 handicap spots. Is there room for a second row of parking in front of those?
Yes.
I like the idea of parking and the playground being all on one side. It eliminates cross traffic. And if more spots are needed, you say it can be accommodated, so.
Yes, when we took a look at it yesterday, along with Mr. Ryan's and Mr. Ferry, we talked about the area maybe 50 to 60 feet in the front and going back more than that. And we thought we could accommodate maybe 20 parking lots, not counting the handicap spots that we're going to have. Also, I'm sure your concerns about giving up the parking lot across the street. I think for a little while anyway, even if once we establish that we're going to have this parking lot, that playground area, that we should maintain the parking across the street. You really can't fit too many cars across the street at night. They shouldn't be parked, it should just be one row. I've seen double park, but it really, you can't get that many cars there. So this would, we hope will eliminate some of the parking issues that are in that area, plus not allowing any parking on the street, which presently they do.
I have a question.
Yeah.
To the Parks and Rec Commission, did you take a vote on this?
We discussed it last month, it was just a preliminary working session, so we have not taken a formal vote on this right now.
Thank you.
Okay, since nobody on the board has any questions, I'm gonna let the public, please identify yourself, give your name and your address. There's no need to go to the podium, because that's not working right now, but this is working, so you can your name and your seat. Yes, ma'am.
Actually, aside from what I need to
Give
say.
your name and your address, please.
Jessica Hargrove, I live on Main Street in that area. I think that maybe you guys need to revisit the park when it rains, because my concern is people driving in that playground when it rains, because you've got a big divot and it turns into a pool, a huge pool.
Sure, what was discussed was taking out some of the loom and putting crushed asphalt in there, similar to what's across.
I'm just saying, where you've got the proposed gate, looks like you're literally going to have them driving into that area where it's turns into a huge pool every single time it rains. The ground is very soggy. Driving cars on that's gonna be a huge concern, especially if you put in a second row parking inside the park.
We did, I won't speak to Mr. Perry, but we did look at it, and just before it dips near the playground, that's where the fence would go, so the park would be in the so-called upland that's there. But was there any plans to, from the road going into the parking lot, to have that crushed asphalt there also, versus not having it go there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, because now, when we walk into the park, is that where we're gonna have to walk into the pool, essentially.
Rest assured, Mr. Ferry will not leave a dip or a pool or anything else. It'll be at grade. He will address the contour of the land, so there won't be flooding or puddles or mud or all that. Once we arrive at a plan, it's gonna be, his department will take care of this.
Okay, the other thing, and Mallory mentioned this, and I appreciate Mallory keeping us informed of everything over the past couple of weeks. She's been great at that, but, you guys did come down 2 weeks ago or last Monday, and you saw the concern, and while I respect your opinion, you don't live there every single day and see the speeding that we incur with children, with babies, with toddlers, and when people are in that playground, when you've got the games going on, you've got parents that are trying to watch the kids playing a game, they've got kids playing on the swing set, you have little kids running out on that road all the time. The speeding needs to be addressed. This doesn't do it. This doesn't do it, and all I'm saying is, I don't know what the cost is or what it's gonna cost, but a lawsuit is gonna cost a lot more.
Just so you understand, that this is regarding the crosswalk, there was a request for a
I
crosswalk, so.
understand that, but there's a bigger issue.
Yes, but that's what we're addressing tonight is the crosswalk. I do, because somebody doesn't drive 80 or 100 miles per hour, people do drive down the road fast, so that's something we have to be concerned about, so we're not going to have that. That's more about enforcement, having some police officer, maybe something.
Can I just finish
Sure.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But back to Mallory's point, is she was saying that there was gonna be more enforcement down there, but there hasn't been.
That's about
Well,
it.
thank you. Nobody else been
There's
down
been
there.
nothing down there.
And I think that you could verify, my sister is there with my daughter when I'm not home, she walks that neighborhood with her multiple times a day.
And Teresa doesn't have it on her video camera. That she
It's
runs.
something that we will look into.
So there's been no.
Do you want to speak?
I'm just,
Just
I'm
identify
still
yourself, please.
concerned. I'm still concerned.
Identify yourself, please.
Carol May, I live, on the property adjacent to the playground. And again,
Are you
I understand
before
that.
the playground?
I'm after the playground,
After,
the house
okay.
is connected, we share the fence. I understand people don't drive at 100 miles an hour, but they're certainly doing 60. They certainly are, because I recorded one on my phone and called the company that I work for, and you don't have to drive at 100 miles an hour to hurt a child.
Mr. Chairman, I
Hurt
just
a
want,
child.
just to address the speeding, I have spoke to the town administrator about the possibility of doing a townwide traffic. I mean, we're here also tonight to hear about speeding concerns on Forest Street. So we do know it's a townwide problem. I did speak to the police chief probably a week or two ago, and I mean, all police chiefs understand in other municipalities that speeding is an issue. So we will look into doing a townwide traffic study and possibly creating like safety zones or speed zones where you can lower speed limits for certain areas within town. So that is on the table. I just wanted to get the hearing back
Sure.
to
It's just
what
that-
we're here for, and also address the fact that we do know there are speeding concerns and we aren't taking them lightly, and we will be looking into that
And I
townwide.
understand that you've got a townwide concern, I certainly appreciate that, but you invite children to play in that section, and I think that needs to be a priority.
And the other thing is, you can lower the speed limits all you want, but without the enforcement, people still
We
drive
need
fast. So
both.
you need,
We're asking for both.
you really need the enforcement.
And it's not
It's
just
the-
that, it's a recreational area. People go boating, people walk around there because it's nice in the summer. They ride their bikes, they walk their dogs. There's a lot of reasons why it's very congested down there, not just the playground. And people driving at excessive speeds. And over 30 is certainly excessive on that road.
30 is excessive on that section.
And there's a lot of opportunity for something bad to happen.
And we've seen it, we've seen the people who don't realize that that road ends and go into the ditch all the time, and then the
Well,
boat
not
pulls them out. You know, it's not okay, 30 is negligent, it's negligent, and there's children playing there, it's not okay.
Also, I'd like to add that over the past couple of weeks, there are people in the playground as late as 3 o'clock in the morning.
And I think that's inviting more people by putting a parking lot in there, because they will be there all night.
I want to ask Mr. Rhines if he can speak to that.
We've had a discussion about that between Mr. Roser and I, and I'll just say this, is that last year when I attempted to institute a bylaw that would state that people would only be able to go on the playgrounds from 10 p.m. until 6 a.m. It would be closed, and you would have no other access, but it failed the town meeting. But under the state law, we do have the power of, under our jurisdiction, that we can set bylaws at a time, so I think that's gonna happen.
They just consistently happens.
And then again,
Pretty consistent in this.
it would be a case of enforcement by the police department also.
This is just, sorry, in the interest of time, this is a little bit beyond the
Yeah.
scope. Good question, good point, I agree, I think they should close at dusk, open at dawn, but anyway, the pedestrian safety is what this hearing in particular is addressing. The speeding concerns are a concern. I did reach out to Serpide to figure out how to get a basically how much we could get a speed study for free through Serpide and how much we would have to pay for, so he's getting me a quote for that, that would be townwide. Anything with the safety zones is engineering, and that's a partnership with MassDOT, as I indicated last time. Takes a little while, so it's not going to be immediate. This is something that we can do to stop encouraging people from crossing the street, stop encouraging high volume of on-street parking, which makes it harder to see, which makes it more difficult to drive down, and will alleviate the congestion. I mean, congestion's a perfect word. When we were down there, we probably saw 5 or 6 vehicles. Some were speeding, some were not. Nobody had a boat, and I'm sure if somebody did come down with a boat at that time, if I was standing there on the side of the road, I would have thought that would fill up the roadway and be concerned. So I agree with what you're saying. I will ask the police department to increase enforcement, as I have previously.
Well, could we vote, could the board vote on that?
Sure.
Send them a letter
Yes.
regarding enforcing the speed limit.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we authorize, excuse me, the town administrator to send a memorandum to the police chief, to the police department, requesting increased enforcement in the area of the playground on Main Street.
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, the ayes have it.
I just want to ask, of those of you that have seen this rough sketch, how do you feel about, would you only talking about the sketch and having, possibly locating everything on one side of Main Street as it relates to the ball field, the playground, the equipment, the everything?
I don't have a problem with it, honestly, as long, I mean, the sketch doesn't look anything like our playground.
No,
You know, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I did pass.
The ball field is actually back here somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just down.
But, I don't have a problem with the proposed idea. There's just a bigger concern overall with the playground being there. And that's really what we're here to advocate for and hope that it continues.
My reason for asking that is because the playground commissioners have done this, you know.
Yep.
And they're working on, obviously, other town officials are too. And if anyone really felt like, don't even consider this, it's not worth it, and I'm not hearing that, so, excuse me, so, what I'm hearing is that this rough draft, this proposal, this idea, is something that from a safety standpoint, it's a good idea.
I think that it's gonna get people parking off the sidewalk, which will open it up for us. I mean, we have videos, Teresa's videos, you can see what they do with the sidewalk when we're there, so
And the
obviously.
sidewalk is very low, so we talked
Yeah.
about raising it.
I would hope that there would be enough parking to avoid them to continue parking on the street, and I think the only way you're gonna do that is if you keep the side parking lot, but the only way to do that would be to eventually still put in a crosswalk.
So my personal feeling is that we ought to go with the new parking in the playground park itself, see how that, don't get rid of the other parking lot, see how that works out. See if people are parking in the parking lot, see if there's I don't know how busy it gets, quite frankly.
That's what
I
I'm
live in
just
the area,
saying, even if you have 20 spots in the park, it's probably not going to be enough. That road is lined, plus that part of the big lot is full, so you're still gonna need overflow in the
So
parking
for a
lot.
little while, I would be in favor of keeping the other parking lot, but then if we decided to keep it, then we'd have to address the crosswalk. You identify yourself, please?
My name's Kate Clement. I live at the corner of Main and Pleasant, and I have lived in Dayton since 1974. My mom's house is the house my sister lives in, is adjacent to the playground, so I've seen what's gone on in that neighborhood for a significant amount of years. I am not a fan of getting rid of the other parking lot. I like the other parking lot being there for overflow traffic. When my mom was ill, people were blocking her driveways. They were parking in her driveway. I think that you need both areas, quite honestly, because of the volume that you're getting down there. You've got, I mean, let's be honest, in today's communities, you've got single parents, and you've got a mom and a dad. They're taking 2 cars when they're coming to see their kid play. And they're leaving in 2 cars. Where are they putting these cars? So you do need additional parking, but I'm not a fan of getting rid of the other one. I'm really not. I would appreciate it if you would consider keeping it. I don't want to see that go to a private party. I like it being in the town's hands. It's well kept. I don't see a problem with it. I would rather we keep it.
I'm open to keeping it for a while. I want to see how it works, though. I want to see if people are using the parking in the playground itself. And if there's no overflow, then we would, to me, it's reasonable to get rid of it. I'd like to see that first, though. So we're going to move, my personal feeling is we're going to move to get the parking lot into the field is in the area that we're speaking about, see how that goes. It's going to take a little bit of time. It has to go before a couple committees for approval, and then see how that works, and then maybe address the parking lot across the street.
I think maybe you should attend while there's a game. Come on down. See
Yes,
what we're dealing
please.
with.
And come visit the park on the weekends and watch people speeding by and see what we do.
I'm not questioning the speed. Someone else did. I'm not questioning the speed. I was there 2 times this week and last week, and I've seen people driving fast now. Mr. Rose is correct. Nobody's going 80, 100 miles an hour that I saw, but they're still going fast. So it's a concern that we have.
So,
Mr. Rose?
based on the input from the folks in the neighborhood and whatnot, I stand corrected on some of my perceptions, and I think some information that has not been relayed to me on this matter. And so I guess I'm sort of at a loss why we couldn't have a Dayton police officer down there when there's organized events. And I think it sounds to me as if that's the most acute time with regards to traffic and maybe some speeding. And when you have a lot of people crossing the road, 5 miles an hour is dangerous. Everyone's got to be careful. So thank you for the public input. It's certainly been a little education for me, and I'd be happy to see the video. I will make a point to be down there when it's wet. I will make a point to be down there when there's scheduled events, so I can see for myself. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just to wrap things up, I'd just like to say that I've been down there quite a few times myself, as you very well know, when events are going on, people park on both sides of the road, it happens all the time, the road's very narrow. The deputy chief of the fire department is here, I don't believe that an apparatus could be able to pass through that area at that time, if people are parked on both sides of the road. We could ask the police chief to put up temporary no parking signs on one side of the road, and that would possibly alleviate the problem of parking on both sides of the street.
But
They
you know,
got
it
were
didn't
taken
help.
off all the.
Those signs were there.
So,
One person.
No, they've done that before, down at the lower end of town, where I have seen temporary parking signs down there because events as such have gone on. The police chief has done it in the past.
He did, it didn't
He's
work.
done
It didn't
It
work.
didn't work.
It didn't help.
work at all.
It didn't help at all.
it.
They,
I
there
didn't
was
know.
no enforcement.
And people parked right underneath the sign.
Mr. Gale, would you speak?
Yeah, so, my name is Jonathan Gale, and for anybody who doesn't know, I'm the ADA coordinator for the town. And what I hope that people will understand a little bit too, is that in order for the town to do anything with the parking lot, whether it's the one that's there now or the new one that's proposed, because they would automatically be doing something, and because we're in the times we are, the ADA component kicks in automatically. There's no way to avoid it, there's no way around it. So if you were to keep the existing space, and I was there, I have no vision, so I also use a cane, a white cane, and I would have to cross the street, etc., let alone a person in a wheelchair or other circumstances. So when we looked at the options of keeping the parking lot where it is, potentially putting a crosswalk in, which separately doesn't necessarily do anything for speed, and that was one of the reasons that we all agreed to order the sign saying playground ahead and so forth, at least to give people a little bit of a notice. But if you were to put, for example, a speed table in there, or a bump as some people call it, that raises other issues. It's very expensive, it's not conducive for wheelchair access or for a person who's using a walking cane and so forth. And then we have to also, at that point, then we would have to put in a ramp. And I'm not saying we wouldn't want to, but that's what we would have to do. We'd have to do the curb cut, do the ramp, do the drainage, change the sidewalk, move the entrance to the entrances even more so than they are right now, widen the entrances. So it requires a lot of other aspects with regard to the ADA component. To move the parking lot across the street qualifies what needs to be done for a lot of the ADA component, including the location of the spaces. Again, this is akin to restriping, which is when you take an existing parking lot and redo it. This is taking a space and turning it into a parking lot. That changes the requirements a little bit in terms of the number of spaces you have to have, where you have to have spaces, the access you have to have for somebody getting out of a regular car versus a van with a wheelchair in terms of width and so forth. And that means posting signs in the fences that say, you know, the handicap signs with the person in the wheelchair, allowing for those spaces. That the area that they're proposing to do this in is conducive for that. Across the street where the parking lot is now is not conducive for any of that. So I'm just mentioning this because I want everybody to understand that from my perspective, you know, I had to, no pun intended, look at all of that and determine whether or not what they're proposing and whether or not that would meet the requirement for the ADA requirement. That's the space that also meets the ADA requirement. And I know it was discussed and somebody alluded to the rainwater and so forth. Those are things that ultimately also affect ADA. If there's something going on and there's flooding in the area or deep water pooling, if a person gets out of a vehicle with a wheelchair or tries to maneuver through the gate area in a wheelchair or a cane or anything like that, then that water makes a difference. So that's something that, you know, we would look at mitigating as well, as was already mentioned. But, you know, that's something that I think everybody should at least just be aware of, that there's a lot more to it than just, can we move it, do we need the space? But the ADA component in these times has to kick in and play a part. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gale. So I'm ready to entertain a motion. We need two motions. One would be whether or not we're going to want a crosswalk, and the second one would be whether or not we're going to support moving the parking area to the playground field.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion that we accept the proposed new parking spaces in the playground on Main Street, with the caveat that for the time being, we also keep the parking lot, the original parking lot across the street. That's my motion.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion on this? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, the ayes have it.
just need to close the hearing.
Well, don't we have to vote? Because the question was whether or not we're going to put a crosswalk. Don't we have to vote on whether or not we want at this time anyway?
we basically accepted this draft and there's no crosswalk there.
I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, the ayes have it.
Thank you for
Please stay in
coming.
touch with the town administrator. I shall let you know what's going on, as far as meetings and stuff like that. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosa, Mr. Ryan.
You're welcome. Thank you for
Town
the
administrator,
input.
members of the board of selectmen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Don't bring it.
If you're fast, you get your autograph.
Thank you.
So, I'll entertain a motion to open the meeting regarding Forest Street.
The hearing, so moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, the ayes have it. So the Board of Selectmen have scheduled a public hearing to accept public comments and questions regarding traffic issues on Forest Street. The public hearing will be held on Wednesday, which is today, July 10th, and interested parties are invited to attend and hear it. We did receive a written notice, this was a written notice, to whom it may concern. I am concerned about traffic issues on Forest Street. I will be away until July 12th, 2019. Please report back minutes of the discussion. Thank you. And Douglas White, who is on Forest Street. So, we've got a hearing on,
Could I answer? I'm Lori Ponce, I live on Forest Street.
could
Who
you ask?
wrote the letter?
I don't, excuse me, I don't think we should mention that name publicly, if
Oh.
a person's out of town.
But this
This is a public record.
This is a public record. It was Douglas White.
Just to,
Sure.
so we have been receiving for a handful of months a variety of complaints about Forest Street speeding concerns. The idea came about to put in some stop stuff.
Yeah, we can't hear
I'm sorry, I'll be louder.
Well, I think there's a lot of
conversations in the hallways.
Yeah, why don't we close those doors?
They just,
They'll- No, it's just,
No, it's a different audio. I'm sorry about that. So, over the last few months, we have fielded a lot of complaints about speeding issues on Forest Street. We did send the police up there, they did make it up there, and they, in a very short amount of time, issued multiple citations. So it was very clear there was a problem. We have upped our enforcement really townwide, but focusing on Forest Street for the time being. As a result of some of these conversations, the idea for stop signs was presented, and then discussing those, it became clear that that's probably not the greatest solution to this issue for a variety of reasons. Delayed response for emergency personnel. It ends up, if you do multiple stop signs, people subconsciously, I guess, make up the time and they rush through between stop sign and stop sign. Correct, and they don't stop. So if they're not obeying the posted, speed signs, they're not going to care about going between the speed sign, the stop signs at the appropriate speed. So we hinted about this earlier, that we're examining other options for townwide solutions, including a townwide traffic study for volume, speed. They even tell you what types of vehicles are doing it, so you know if it's a commercial truck or just your regular passenger vehicle. Times of day, the volumes, if it's rush hour, people are just going to work. And then that gives us a better idea when we can go in and enforce and remind everybody, you gotta slow down, this is a.
You really don't know what it is on Forest Street.
Well, that's
okay?
what the speed
Well,
study
let's-
tells
I've
us.
lived there 58 years,
could you
and at
identify
that
yourself,
time,
please?
Raytheon was
Could
there.
you identify yourself, please?
But
Can you give your name?
it's Louise Hebert. I live right across the street from the water department. And you should see when they come up on Prospect Street, and they turn that corner, and they go by like a bullet. I've seen them miss Tremont Street and hit the trees and smash their cars.
That's why they have that.
Yeah.
They have that.
And, the
Exactly.
police parked across the street, and then I noticed they parked down further, like the beginning of Forest. But, they catch a few, but not that many.
Regarding the stop signs that was suggested earlier as a possibility, I'm not saying I'm in favor of, the board's in favor of it, but we talked about putting freeway stop signs at Prospect Street and Spring Street, which means if you're going down Forest Street, you're gonna have to stop a couple of times, which
Right.
may slow the traffic down, but as town administrator indicated, people also speed up to go to the next
I
stop
don't care
sign.
how many stop signs you're gonna put, they're gonna go right through.
Right, so I just wanted to
Yeah.
explain to people what we're talking about when we're talking about putting extra stop signs. Mr. Marble wanted to speak.
Oh, you were, I saw your hand up. Go ahead.
You want to speak? Just give your name, please.
Yes. I'm Thea Somna Hagopian. I live at 48 Forest Street in North Dayton. I'm 4 houses from the Taunton line. So if you come down from South Walker, you turn right or you turn left. And it's bad. There was a case where the house on the corner was hit several years ago. There's a barrier around it now. I'm sure, Greg, you know about that. But it's getting worse. It's a very, very narrow road. There are no pavements on either side. I help my neighbor across the road. She's 97 years old and lived here all her life. And I'm scared of backing up now. So I just want to say that it's a problem. It's a huge problem.
Thank you.
Mr.
Thank
Chairman, I
you.
just wanted to piggyback up what you said, and thank you for that. I travel that way for work routinely, and part of the problem is that when you come from South Walker, from the Taunton side,
Yes.
people are going they're already going too fast on that road.
Yes.
And then they just keep going that speed, and it's a
Yes.
straight shot down Forest
Yes.
Street. So I definitely share that concern as well.
Thank you.
You had your hand up.
So Terry Sullivan, 229 Forest Street. So one of the police officers has been parked across the street from my house for weeks. Every single day, he's pulling multiple people over, going extremely fast. I spoke with the officer on Monday, who had just pulled someone over going 54. The speed limit is 30 on that road. So my question to the board is, do you have the statistics and the data about the volume of tickets that have been given out in the past few weeks? The maximum speed, and what, other than stop signs, what else would be?
I don't have maximum speed, it was like 26 citations in a month.
That's it.
Well, to be honest, they didn't go up there for the whole month, like it was, but one day in 2 hours, it was 6.
I find that hard to believe that it's only 26. I find that extremely hard, because I've seen him on Monday, when I was speaking to him, he pulled away 3 times.
Yeah,
He's
I
right
mean, it's
outside
been
of
a
my
lot,
house.
it's been a lot. Maybe it's 26 and 14 verbals. 26 is sticking in my head, because sometimes it's verbal that is a written citation. Maybe 26, but anyway, it's significant. I mean, the point's taken.
So, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Were you not done? Because I don't want to jump fast.
Well, no, I have a few points, actually. One being, will the board be aware of the speed that people are traveling that's been documented?
That's what the traffic study does. It tells you the volume, the speed, the type of vehicle, and the time of day. And that's what I'm trying to work with Circuit on and do town-wide. We do get 2 free a year, so Tremont Street may be one of them. And I'm just waiting on a proposal back from them. They may, due to the volume of the work, may not be able to do it, but then we would potentially hire a company that would help us get this data so we can make the best decision. It's all about making the best decision. Plopping up stop signs, to your point, might seem like a good idea, might seem like a quick fix, but it might not have the best result in the end. And when we sat down and talked about it, it wasn't discussed.
Mr. Marble, you had your hand up first. I'll get to you.
Yeah, hi, Dave Marble, live on 102 Forest Street. One of the questions I have, do we have any speed posting signs on Forest Street to begin with?
One.
We have the one. And the other thing too, I know in Rehoboth, they have signs up saying, in Rehoboth, they have signs up saying beware there.
Excuse me.
Thank you. I know in Rehoboth, they have signs up saying beware of walkers on the street. So a lot of people that walk Forest Street, and it's got to the point now where a lot of people don't want to walk anymore because it's unsafe.
You're right.
And is there any way to get more, I know it's not going to do any good, but can we put more signs up?
Like
Well, speed limit.
A speed limit sign, children playing?
Speed limit signs are actually placed per Mass DOT regs, but I mean, we can look into that. Again, once you do the study and the engineering, it comes back with a bunch of recommendations, and you explore those as well. The gentleman.
Yeah, please, yeah.
Tom Monroe, Forest Street. What are your other options besides a stop sign? Nothing, what else would work? Forget about signs, forget about cops being there once or twice a week, giving their friends passes, because I've seen that happening all week. They're saying 26 tickets. This guy's stopping people all day long, and I seen him waving and saying, hey, buddy, what are you doing? And they, see you later. You're only seeing the tickets they feel like writing. But what else besides a stop sign? What else is there? A stop sign, for example, in Newport, down by the breakers, there's roads, 20 feet, then a stop sign, 20 feet more, then another stop sign, 20 feet more, another stop sign. So what if you roll through it? You're slowing down. I've lost every animal I've ever had on Forest Street. No, you're not gonna slow down. Without a stop sign, you can be a yield sign for them. They don't have to stop, but they'll see it and there might be a cop. So they might get a fine. But you don't, I think you should put stop signs, because they're gonna at least wonder. You might wonder at least. Without a stop, I mean, what are your other options, really? 2 o'clock at night, you hear them coming from Taunton on 44, all around. What's your other option besides a stop sign? Really, what is it?
That's why we're here. I know, I agree with you.
No, you said
Speed
other
bumps
options.
and
You have been
everything.
saying
Well,
other
that's
options. What are
engineers
they?
do for me.
If you have a stop sign, even if you roll through it, you're slowing down. After those cops leave every night, there's a kid on a rice burner doing 100 miles an hour down there. Every night, a blue and silver rice burner. I walked out on the road, I didn't know what way to go. I thought he was gonna run me over. All right, that's all I gotta say, but roll through a stop sign, you're still slowing down. That's all I'm saying.
What about the other car and the other stop sign? If you go through it, then there's an accident. I mean,
So
I'm not,
what?
your point is, so
So
what?
let the insurance deal with it. 4-way stop sign.
Identify yourself, please.
Robert Derby, I live on 207 Forest Street. The issue of speeding on Forest Street is nothing new. I've lived there for 59 years. I've lost 4 dogs and 3 cats. What is new, fairly new, is the volume of traffic.
Yeah.
And that's a problem, I guess, that every street in Dayton enjoys. Stop signs can't hurt. Police writing tickets, they're doing a good job up there now, at least slowing people down. I don't know how many they're writing. As far as your traffic study, I don't really hold much with it, because if we keep getting these subdivisions rammed down our throats, your study is gonna be worth beans. That's all I've got to say.
To be honest, the second part of something, it's not just a fallback. We need it to continue with that safety. It's just a basis, it's just a starting.
David O'Connor, 237 Forest Street. The basic problem is, like he says, the volume from the other side of West Dayton, South Dayton, and Forest Street is an on-ramp to 140 and 44, and an off-ramp. So in the morning, the traffic is intense, then it's quiet, and then when rush hour comes in, they come back in, the same speed, back and forth. Yep.
Well, I don't think we can control the volume, maybe the speed, but the volume, what do you
It's
think?
it's because the volume from Pine Street to new development, because I've been there for years, and it's increased and increased. So where the on-ramp, to cut across, instead of going to William Street, they cut right through the middle, and where the street that gets it.
I used to go down Forest Street, to go to work.
Yeah, at what speed, you know?
You got your hands.
Sue Silva, Forest Street.
Somebody says.
Yes.
Sue Silva, I've been 40 years on Forest Street, and he's absolutely right, it is a cut through.
Oh,
And
yeah.
over the 40 years, I've noticed that there's a lot of trucks, like construction, and they go fast, and I don't know if anybody else on the street has noticed that, but the past couple of years, it's like really ramped up, and I don't know if the roads can take that kind of intense traffic like that.
Don Hartley, 63 Forest. Not only construction trucks, but there are also trucks going to and from the auto auction. And I don't understand why they're using Forest Street when they're right next to 44. I mean, sometimes they're loaded with cars, sometimes they're empty going to pickup cars. I don't understand why that traffic isn't using William Street. But as far as the speed is concerned, it's dangerous to even go check your van. You have to look both ways, and then sometimes a car comes up on you faster than you can imagine. There are other communities I know that have cameras on roads, and that if a car, they're programmed so that if a car exceeds a certain speed limit, a picture is taken of the car and a citation is issued. It's impractical to think that we can keep an officer on Forest Street. There are other things that they need to tend to it down. But something like that, not only on Forest Street, but any other main street in Dayton that needs it. I don't know what the cost would be, but it's certainly less than a human life.
I agree.
And I just want to point out and have, please keep in mind, Board of Selectmen, please keep in mind, I guarantee you, every person in this room that lives on Forest Street is thinking about the rumors of a development. And I see someone from Dayton Industries, so I know they're here to listen about the development. I guarantee you everyone in this room is thinking that. So when that comes up, I know it's not at this meeting, down the road, the common theme is volume. When we talked about Main Street parking, there's an increase in volume. When we're talking about Forest Street speeding, there's an increase in volume. Unfortunately, to me, it's extremely unfortunate that this town keeps approving more and more subdivisions. It's extremely unfortunate for all the residents, especially the children, 2 of which I have that are in the school department. It's extremely overcrowded. But when we get to that point, I'm sure it's coming down the road, I just please beg that the selectmen keep in mind the volume, the speeding, because when that development, if it does happen, it's gonna be an unbelievable problem on that street.
Just so you understand, the board doesn't address developments. The zoning board, the planning board. 40Bs, we need to have 10% affordable housing. We got less than 6% in the town. It's going to go down when they do the new census. So they almost have to be approved until we get that 10%. Other developments go before the planning board, but they don't come to the, we have some.
But will the
input,
selectmen not decide anything about traffic when that becomes an issue?
They do it, having been on the zoning board for 17 years, whenever a 40B comes in, we have to do a traffic study. And we look at how it impacts the area. It has to be overwhelming. The traffic has to be overwhelming for it to become an issue. I know there's gonna be more cars when there's development, that happens, but it's kind of tough to start a 40B until we get that 10% affordable housing. So, I'm not sure what you're referring to as far as the development, but I'm not sure.
Bob Murray, 459 Forest Street. I've lived there since 1977. I also have lost a number of dogs, and I'm now walking a dog every day. And one of the things that disturbs me is that I have been flipped off. I've been told to get out of the street. I walk against the traffic. I'm very much aware of the traffic, but if there are 2 cars that are coming together, passing the same, they don't stop for me. They must forget they have 2 pedals on the car. One is to slow down, one is to go a little faster. But it seems that I'm the one who's in the wrong because I'm walking on the street. That is not acceptable to me. The speed, people on the telephones is incredible. I mean, it's like, I've had one woman stop and say, "Oh my God, I'm sorry, I didn't even see you." How can you not see somebody with a dog? But it happens. And it's gonna happen to a child. And that concerns each of us that is sitting here tonight. Thank you.
You had your hand up? Okay. Any other questions, comments?
Steve Watts, 138 Forest Street. I live at the corner of Spring and Forest. My driveway would be affected by a stop sign. I'm just giving my opinion to the people. There are traffic issues up there with the speed. I'm not gonna say there isn't, but I oppose the stop sign. And my reason is my house is close to the road. I don't wanna hear screeching. And, you know, on a cool fall day or a spring day, I don't wanna hear cars slowing down in the middle of the night, you know, taking off. I mean, as it is now, they come down Spring Street and they do, but, you know, I think that what the gentleman said about some sort of photo camera or something was an awesome idea. The police have been doing a good job out there, I have to comment on that, I see them out there all the time. I just don't, I think police presence in the whole town in general, because there's surrounding towns that people say, "Oh, I won't go through there because they're notorious for writing tickets." Well, let's make Dayton the same way. Unfortunately, you know what I'm saying, you know? I just totally oppose the stop sign. I'm gonna be backing out of my driveway into a 3-way stop sign. I've lived there 37 years, I've seen one accident there. I think we're gonna have more accidents on these 2 intersections if we put stop signs up there. Thank you.
Any other questions? Does the board have any?
No, I wanted to piggyback off what Mr. Murray said. I actually used to do a 3-mile run in that area and use Forest Street to get back to Tremont Street where I live to get home. And
That 3-mile run?
yeah, well, right, I'm just kidding.
You still do it?
No, so that's actually my point is, it was a little bit late, kind of like dusk time the last time I did it. I mean, I was wearing a white t-shirt, and I'm not sure if the person who was, and I also run against traffic. I'm not sure if they weren't paying attention or what was going on, but they almost swerved right into me. And since that point, and I can only imagine what it's like living there, because I just go down Forest for my run. But now I use the track out back of Town Hall because of that incident. So I definitely think it's a real concern. And I've seen it, so I definitely understand.
But there's no sidewalks, and you're immediately into somebody's front yard.
Yeah.
So there's really no place for you to share the road, right?
It's a lot of old houses out there.
They're very close.
A lot of houses are close to the road, especially my house. I know the house across the street.
Do you have any questions?
Suggestions to you, if you're looking for it, to take all these comments under advisement, and we could get together, put together a solution that.
I think Mr. Marvel's idea with the speed limit signs, at least gives the people
Well, I
an
want to look
idea.
into that, and on the flashing ones, because people are not paying
The
attention.
flashing one doesn't do any good, excuse me, Melanie, I don't mean
It's
to be
okay.
rude. Because you'll get the guys on the motorcycles, they'll stop right in front of my house, and they wanna see how fast they can go through
Okay.
the radar.
I guess I'm like a rule
So,
follower, so
I
I don't think that way. I was just thinking to the point about getting somebody's attention, like, oh, woo, I'm,
Right.
maybe I'm thinking about my day, or thinking about what I have to do at work, and I'm not really mentally there.
Maybe put a photo, like a sign
I
on the
do like
bottom, you're on Candy
the
Candy.
auto tickets, there's a thing that they like shoot out an auto ticket, which is.
One more quick comment, I have to listen to Steve, I kind of have to retract on, even though I'd like to still hear other reasons or ways to slow it down, I like the idea of the gentleman that said taking pictures if you're speeding. Has the town ever thought of things like that anywhere else in Dayton?
I don't believe
I
that.
don't think we have any.
I mean, putting freeway stop signs, you
'Cause
can
that-
go through this whole town and say, okay, we're gonna put one here. Being on the fire department, I can tell you the bad streets where we have accidents and stuff like that. I mean, we could go hog wild up on Cedar Street. How many accidents we have up there? You could put one at Deborah Jane Court or anything like that to try to, but you know, it's
Well, it's
the
rural.
whole town.
You're
It's
rural,
right,
and you
exactly.
have a
But
huge influx of
unfortunately,
people
a lot of these
in a short
streets,
amount of
like they say, Forest Street is a shortcut between 44 and out.
It's also straight, flat,
It's a shortcut.
It's a shortcut.
It is.
I would, that's my suggestion, take it under advisement, we get our heads together and come up with this.
Yes, I just have one more comment,
Sure.
if I may. Could we stop using the word handicapped and use disabled instead? It just like handicapped to me is like, can we just use disabled? I would really appreciate it.
I think I may have used handicap when I was describing the pocket spots.
Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion then. Take this under
Mr.
advisement.
Chairman, I make a motion that we take the concerns that we've heard this evening under advisement, and then we can regroup and determine a path forward on this.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I feel like people might be asking themselves this question. When we come back here, you'll be alerted again in the same manner with an advertised notice.
One question, the zoning board, would it be possible, if there's anything going on Forest Street, to be notified like we were the last time, as far as subdivisions go?
Oh,
We-
yeah,
Yeah,
when you're in a
that's
butter,
possible.
you go on a list and they
So
have to,
that's-
just like you got today,
Very
or for
good.
today.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, just so you know, for you to get noticed, the artist get noticed is 300 feet from where the development's going to go in. So not everybody in Forest Street gets notified. I have no idea what development somebody's talking about, but it's
Oh, I think
300 feet.
you do.
It's 300 feet from where the development, so not the whole street, just so people don't think you're gonna all get notified. It's just those abutters to the potential development. No further questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, ayes have it. We've taken it under advisement.
Mr. Chairman, if there's no further comment, I make a motion that we close the hearing.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, the ayes have it.
Thank you everyone for coming and letting us know.
Thank you. So we're going to go into the appointment of interrupting town accountant. I know it's at 7:30, but we're a few minutes early, but if you don't mind, we'll check it outside.
This is Mr. Chris Laviolette.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you. Mr. Laviolette, excuse me, I'm sorry, has an extensive history in accounting, municipally, specifically in municipal finance. And he has agreed, there's a contract that you were sent to serve as our interim town accountant. If you don't know, the town accountant has separated after 13 years of service. But this is our very busy time with end of year closings. So you had previously approved seeking out an interim town accountant, and then going out for a full-time accountant. Mr. Laviolette.
So I've looked at the resume, which is pretty impressive. I've also looked at the contract. Do you have any idea as to how many hours you would be, you think you'd be working?
Primarily, I think I'm limiting myself to 1 day a week right now, Wednesdays. Fridays if necessary. I understand that you're closed here on Friday, but if, whether I can access the accounting system remotely or whether we can make, accommodations to get access to the building, I can work Friday afternoons as well, or whatever time is necessary. But I think primarily just the Wednesdays right now.
Does anyone have any questions?
I guess, I don't, I was actually I was really impressed by your qualifications, and I think the town administrator did a good job seeking you out. I guess my question would be, so I get that you'll do the 1 day a week. I guess I would defer to you in terms of if you needed more time, like kind of once you're in the rhythm of things.
Sure.
But would you be available, like, I know the town administrator works closely with the town accountant on certain things, like if she had a question on like a Thursday, would she be permitted to?
Absolutely. She has my contact information. She can feel free to contact me at any time.
That was my only question.
Mrs. Goulart, do you have any questions?
There's no reference to travel or expenses in here.
No, it's all built into my hourly rate. I have no
Okay.
intention of billing you
Okay, the
for
starting
travel.
date, I assume, would be the 11th, not the 3rd.
Actually, I guess starting date would actually be next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday.
Yeah.
17th.
Okay.
I have a general question, Mr. Chairman, about the contract, but it's not necessarily for Mr. Laviolette. Why was the contract determined to be from July 2019, we'll just say for the sake of argument, and through the end of August 31st, 2019? I guess my concern, or not really concern, but I guess my question is, what if we found a replacement before August 31st, 2019, what would happen? I don't mean a replacement, I
You
mean
mean a
like a
full-time town
permanent,
accountant?
correct, town accountant.
Yes, I mean, we're not gonna run into that problem because applications are due August 5th. I mean, to the general public.
Yeah, so then interview.
I'm
So
sorry,
interview and appointments.
I
and
retract
such.
that, I'm sorry, for some reason I was thinking 2020, so I was thinking a
Oh,
whole,
no.
and
No,
I'm like,
it
I don't
says-
think it should take that long,
No,
okay, that's fine.
so that really works
That's
with
only like
our
one
end
and a half.
of year needs, what the kind of town accounting timeline is for finishing up the books, starting a new stuff, certifying free cash for our town meeting, which I guess makes sense, is very important.
So you fully expect, I'm sorry,
I do fully expect, in
that we will-
September, you will be appointing a full.
okay, I'm making sure so that,
And we do have the
we
ability,
have all our
in case,
bases covered.
we're not gonna go without, we do have the ability to extend it, on a monthly basis.
Okay.
And I don't have any objection to, you know, if for some reason you decided that you had a full-time town accountant and they wanted them to start before August 31st, I'm not opposed to, you know, terminating the contract at that point, just effectively making me, you know, contractor at will, which is
The
fine.
other thing is, if we have somebody who might not be totally, it would be nice for some cross-training.
That was my other question.
This really opens it up for a lot of variables.
I have no further questions.
Any further questions? Entertain a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we appoint, I'm gonna make another motion after this, appoint Mr. Laviolette as the interim town accountant,
Is there a second?
beginning July 17th, 2019, for the period ending August 31st, 2019.
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, the ayes have it. Congratulations.
Congratulations, and thank you.
You have a second motion related to this?
Nope,
No?
because we added, which was gonna be my second. Thank you.
Thank you.
Look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Look forward to it. Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And we will change
That's the
those.
building inspector, he's very important.
Mr. Chairman, we will change the dates before the contract is signed.
Yes.
Absolutely, yes, I have it in
As we
mind.
go into that.
That was really for you to see, the duties specifically that he would be performing, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, public input, any public input? If not, I think before we get to the town administrator's report, we have some people here that want to be heard, so you want to jump down for something else?
Mr. Chairman, give me 1 second, I'm sorry, I just scroll back to the top. I make a motion that we move to new business 8E, review the fire chief recommendation for part-time employee wage scale.
Is there a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, the ayes have it.
Hello, chief.
So I think the town administrator has given everybody a copy of what I'm looking to do. My ultimate goal is to compensate part-time call personnel fairly. Right now, I have personnel that have 25 to 30 years of service, and they're making the same hourly rate as somebody that I appoint tomorrow. I don't think that that's fair. I think that they should be recognized for their time of service to this community. The other thing I'm looking to do is establish some incentive for somebody to be or recognize that somebody has an EMT basic certification, an EMT advanced certification, a paramedic certification, because they take extra time to maintain that license, to provide that service to this community. And we utilize a lot of those personnel on Saturday shifts to cover our ambulance. So basically, that's the gist of it. I can accomplish all of this with my current budget. I don't need any additions. With that said, the only thing that would adjust it is something catastrophic. So if there's a large structure fire, several hurricanes, blizzards, obviously I can't control those dynamics, those things. So that would need to be adjusted if something like that happened. And that's really, if you have any questions, I can answer.
So what is the current wage right now then? Did you say?
Current wage rate
Yeah.
is $16.99.
And so somebody, for example, over 15 years, it goes up to 1967. The other thing is, do we have to have these EMT license and all that other stuff anyway? Is that a requirement?
No.
No.
So currently we run for a starting firefighter, they just have to be EMT and first responder certified in the state of Mass. CPS.
And they call firefighters and EMS, on average, how many hours a week are they working?
It changes depending on the number of calls. On average, each personnel can take a 6-month shift per month, and that's just 6-hour shift. I'm sorry.
It's good, it's really good.
So they can take a 6-hour shift every month, and basically the thought behind that when my brother created it before he left was just to get people into the station, doing chores, cleaning the stations, going over the apparatus. It's given us a lot, as Deputy Chief Hoskins speak to. It's given us a lot more accountability towards things being in the right places, operating properly, apparatus ready to go, stations maintained, especially Station 2, which is strictly a call station. That station has been cleaned a lot more and just maintained better than what it was in the past.
Thank you.
Are you, under where you have EMTA and EMTB, where it says, up in the top box, where you have wages listed, EMS personnel, does that title personnel or A or B, does that run the gamut of what their training is? In other words, you have basic and then you have advanced life support. So this is a generic term. Are advanced life support people paid more than basic?
Yes. They would be with this. Currently, they are not.
Okay, so you're recognizing training in addition to longevity?
Correct.
Okay. So what's A and B? EMTA, EMTB?
So the state of Mass has 4 levels of emergency medical services. There's the first responder, which is basically they can bandage you up. They can't transport in an ambulance. EMT basic is the next step up. They can administer oxygen, but they can do aspirin, they can do nebulizers, and a few other medications, and they can transport in an ambulance. An EMT advanced is just a little higher. They can do intravenous lines, they can do intubations, and things like that. A few drugs via intravenous lines, and then paramedic is basically a nurse in our ambulance. So we run paramedic basic. Our ultimate goal is we try to keep 2 paramedics in 1 ambulance because that's the best level of care we can provide to the community. But there is times where we back down to paramedic advanced or paramedic basic. So we just need to recognize these people that are providing the service. I don't know if I answered your question or not.
You did. Mr. Chairman, to our chief, I think this is very fair. One issue that we had at my place of employment, which is sort of the corporate world, was that new people were being hired and making more than the folks who had been there for a while. And so of course what was happening was the people who were sort of seasoned and were kind of the backbone of the company ended up leaving and going somewhere else and obviously getting more money somewhere else. So I think it makes perfect sense to sort of recognize that type of service and to make it sort of fair so that the longer you're there, you get paid more per hour. That just makes sense. And I also think it's well thought out to have this sort of structure where you are sort of recognizing someone's training and certification, and I think that's a good thing because it incentivizes people to get more training and to get more certifications. And I think that really adds value to the department, so I just wanted to thank you for that.
And I'll add too that the stipend positions, if you look at the top 3, the deputy, the captain, and the lieutenant, those stipends are currently in place already. So that's not really in addition to my budget. Those stipend positions are already in place.
So that the public knows that the addition to your budget is a little bit more than 3,000. Is that from fiscal year 19 to fiscal year 20, roughly?
Yeah, that's what I asked for just.
So we're not asking for additional money in your budget, but it's an increase of 3,000, a little bit more than $3,000. Any other questions?
No, I have none, Mr. Chairman.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we acknowledge the call personnel wage proposal as prepared and presented this evening.
Second, friendly amendment, I believe we have to approve it, the chief can't set wages.
Okay.
So just change the word acknowledge to approve.
Amendment approved. Yes, my motion is to approve it.
And you second that motion?
Yeah, with a friendly amendment.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, the ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We can jump down to,
I'm fine.
is there a place to go? No?
Well,
Can we look at,
the evaluations took a while last time.
Yes,
So-
so
I don't,
Whatever you want.
for your sake, I'm
Okay, that's,
Mr. Chairman.
And we look at the 5-year updates, because Mr. Ferry is here somewhere, I think. And Mr. Ferry and the chief are, just in case anyone has questions on those two
I'm
departments.
amenable to this.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we take agenda item 11A, updates on 5-year plans on the board.
And I'm going to second that, and under discussion, I would suggest that Selectman Goulart go first, because the fire chief and the highway superintendent are here. Second.
any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, the ayes have it. Why don't you start with the fire chief? Is this really?
Yeah, it's in here somewhere.
You can find.
For the benefit of the public, is Mr. Perry? Oh.
I'll find it.
I was gonna text
And can you find Mr. Gale too, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, because, yeah, I see it. For the benefit of the public, the two departments that are on my assignment list are fire department and the highway department. So I met with Mr. Ferry and Chief McGee. Initially, we met jointly and we discussed a number of issues, some specific to fire, some specific to highway. What came out of it, the initial discussion, was that we feel that there is a town-wide need for a centrally located fuel department, fuel depot. So I'll just read this. During the discussion with Tom Ferry, the need to save money on vehicle fuels with an available supply centrally located arose. This discussion was expanded to include Chief McGee and eventually Chief McDonald, Jim Aguirre, and Don Hershey. All agreed that the town should move ahead to secure this facility. It will save money for the town, it will provide a source of fuel for town vehicles during day-to-day operations, and a strategic supply during snowstorms and other emergencies. For these reasons, we feel that while we are working on other priorities for the fire and highway departments, this project should move ahead because it will benefit the entire town. The fuel depot was listed as #1 on both departments, meaning fire and highway, list, but we decided it should become a town priority and not just that of two departments. Mr. Ferry has gathered some very preliminary information, and with your approval, we will continue to work on this priority along with other town officials while continuing to work on our department priorities. So initially, what we are asking the board is what your feeling is about a town fuel depot, and if it's a positive, initially a positive thing that we should move ahead with. We're looking for some kind of guidance to say, keep working on this and report back to us, gather more information about costs and all of that. So that's the first question we have. We'd like to know what the board's feeling is as far as should we continue to pursue this. And I will also ask Mrs. Anstey to speak because she's looked into the possibility of bidding fuel and what that could save the town. So.
Take it away. I, just for fun, sort of, just to see, I looked at the last year's gallons usage information and then applied through Sursage, we procure fuel. Applied those figures, we would have saved about $8,000.
But there's other costs, though, right?
Well, of
Because
course, you
it's
have
gonna
to
be-
build the fuel depot.
Right,
I
but
mean,
there's gonna be insurance, because I'm sure there's gonna be insurance for
right,
liability if
but
something should happen to this fuel.
you have all of these people, in some cases, leaving town, and they're paying market rate for gasoline, where we can procure it and get it at a much,
I'm interested in going forward, but I also am concerned about the cost, I'd be interested in finding out what the whole cost would be.
Mr.
I-
Chairman?
Yeah.
So I also agree we should definitely pursue it. I don't have any, I mean, I have concerns about the cost because you're getting a return, and we just want to make sure, obviously, that the investment is worth the return and how many years it will take to make the money back. But I just want everyone to also consider the fact that we will be getting electric charging stations. I understand the fire department will always have its fuel-powered vehicles, and I get the highway department will as well. But I just want everyone to keep in mind that if that's where we go, because I do think that eventually the police departments in general will be able to access commercially available fuel-efficient vehicles, and at that time you will be beholden to purchase them. So I just want us to keep that in mind as we proceed, but I'm very supportive of it. I've heard the conversations. You've been speaking about it for a very long time. So I definitely think it's a worthy idea that we should definitely keep looking into in earnest.
I did have preliminary conversations with the Dayton Water District, because if it's moved at Tremont Street, they pass right by it, and it would be of interest for them to be able to use it. So that's a
And by my
conversation
conversation,
we
we mean gasoline and diesel, whatever is needed by our, I'll call it fleet, the town fleet. So, okay, so we have consensus from the board to move ahead with gathering more information on the fuel depot.
Selectman Goulart, I'm gonna make a motion, just for,
Yeah, good idea.
to have it be official, but I make a motion that we continue to gather preliminary information pursuant to the establishment of a fuel depot, a town-run fuel depot.
I'll step down and second that motion. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, the ayes have it.
Now, so that's our town-wide issue, and we will report back. Now, for the fire department, first item has already been taken care of, and that was the previous vote. So, in ranked order, what the chief is requesting, number one, is addition/renovation for Station 1. That's the station on Main Street. We don't currently have a cost estimate. Item number 2, replace car 3 with new utility body truck, estimated cost $60,000, and make the current car 3 forestry 1. Number 3, replace ladder 1, estimated cost $1 million. Number 4, replace engine 3, estimated cost $500,000. Number 5, replace forestry 2, estimated $100,000. And then number 6, down the road, he would be looking to hire additional full-time personnel. So that completes the ranked order from the fire department.
I have a question on that, Chief. Are these in order of priority, or are these just not in any order?
They're in order of priority right now.
I would make a suggestion, if it's okay with you, Chief, pursuant to one addition renovation for Station 1. I know our townwide building manager is really focused on the downstairs, but perhaps once that's completed, and you've done a great job on that, you can have discussions with Mr. Gale and the building commissioner, town administrator, if you want, and start discussing those renovations, Selectmen Goulart, obviously you as well, just so we can start talking about it and maybe get some preliminary estimates so we can fill in that gap, since we don't have any right now.
Okay, and once I get through the next department, if we have a vote of the board to, right now, this is what we will follow, and maybe in the future, something might change, but now that we have discussed the fuel depot, this in effect is number 1 for the fire department, so we will move ahead with doing the work that we have to do. Now, going to the highway department, number 1, pickup truck estimated $50,000. This was tabled at the annual town meeting, so hopefully this is going to be on the warrant for the fall town meeting. Item number 2, a large area mower, estimated cost $55,000. Number 3, a new street sweeper, estimated cost $250,000. And number 4, a new highway department facility, possibly at the transfer station, with a comment that if in fact this occurs, we would sell the current location on Route 138 and for commercial property development. So that's the plan there. So actually, number 1, Mr. Ferry, you're going to request that be on the fall town meeting?
Yes, both that and the mower.
And I was gonna ask you, since the pickup truck was not acted on at the annual, then, okay, so that's the next one. So, the large area mower, now, is that going to replace something we have, or is it gonna be in addition to?
Replace.
Okay. Okay, so that's the highway department. Does anybody have any questions about Mr. Ferry's, ranked priority?
No? No, I think it looks good to me. And thank you for your work, Selectmen, who are working with the departments on this.
Okay, so, could we get a motion to, tentatively approve the prioritized list from the fire and highway departments so that we can start working on, well, especially with number one on the fire department, start gathering information and cost. Yeah.
So moved, if that was a motion.
Did you get that, Mrs. Brady?
So, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept the priority list outlined for both the fire and highway departments as presented this evening.
I'll step down and second that.
Thank you.
And just for clarification, doesn't mean that I'm endorsing all of this, it's just that we're looking into these different items because
Yeah.
we're talking a couple $1 million, so we have to see.
Right, and all we're asking for is, the intent was to give you a progress report tonight and ask you for support to move ahead with gathering data and information, not approving the actual thing, but telling us, okay, now move ahead with it and come back to us. So that's what we'll do.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, the ayes have it. So just for the public, each selectman has come up with 2 items that they have on their wish list for the next 5 years. Mrs. Goulart just presented hers. My 2 items on the wish list, we had discussed this on April 10th, and this is 3 months later, we're discussing it again. My first item is the new library, and in my report, I recently spoke with Library Director Jocelyn Tavares regarding the status of our application for the addition to our library. Although the state budget is not complete, it does look like there will be more funding for our libraries in the Commonwealth. It means that they're not adding additional funds. There will be funding, but not additional funds. The library trustees are meeting tonight. They're going to meet again. They meet on the second Wednesday of the month, which conflicts with the Selectmen's meetings. But they're going to change the next meeting to the first Wednesday in August so that I can attend that meeting with more information. As noted earlier, I am in favor of building a new library versus adding to our present library. So right now, the plan and what's before the state is in addition to the current library, the Andrew Carnegie Library on Main Street. My second item on the wish list is making town buildings ADA compliant. On April 16, 2019, Jonathan Gale, he happens to be here, our ADA coordinator, and I went to all town buildings and put up the ADA notices. As we all know, the ADA coordinator position was not funded for fiscal year 2020. Mr. Gale continued to work on ADA issues for the town. On June 27th, we met with Town Administrator Melanie Aristine to discuss the upcoming grant that we'll be applying for to hire someone to assess our town buildings for ADA compliance. This is going to begin on August 1st. Mr. Gale, myself, and Town Administrator will be submitting this application in August. Mr. Gale has done extensive research and work on this grant. Mr. Gale, myself, Town Administrator, and others met at Lane Playground on July 1st to discuss, among other things, ADA compliance. So that's my report.
I just have a quick
Sure.
request on that. So, the state gave a preliminary announcement about that grant, and the expectation is that we get started on procuring a company that would assist us in our plan. And Mr. Gill, you had mentioned that you have a handful of, well, you have knowledge of who's
Yes,
doing that
I
business.
think I just got an email from you. I
Yes,
thought I
so
responded. If I
requested.
didn't, I will send it to you tomorrow.
Thank you. Brilliant.
Absolutely.
Just have to
And-
get started on that.
Yeah,
This is
then-
something I don't want to be behind.
No, and then I will also propose some dates once Mr. Pacheco is back from his vacay,
You can have vacation.
for all of us to get together.
Really not worried about security here. Just telling everybody who's on vacation.
Sorry, but I'm babysitting the house.
Yeah, with vacation in Florida, so just so people know.
That's in Portugal.
But
Thank you.
And you talk about me, huh? But in all seriousness, I will propose a couple of days tomorrow with my email to both of you, for all of us to get together once he's available,
Yeah.
so that we can do the preliminary application and have that ready to go.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we vote to accept the progress report from your committee on the proposed library and ADA compliance with town buildings.
Second.
For a second. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, the ayes have it.
And thank you to everyone involved in those two plans as well. I didn't activity type anything up for this, so I'm gonna make a motion, since our building commissioner is here and already giving us an update, that as part of my 5-year plan, we're gonna move to old business 7A.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, the ayes have it.
Mr. Commissioner.
I got this.
Yeah, like a legit ball.
I'm just gonna pass these out.
That's in case it's signed.
You just want to put it aside until I get to it, but.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think so.
There you go. Have one for you, Joe, just the chief, no, that's okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris.
No problem, have a good night, thank you.
Okay, so, just so everybody at home knows, we're working diligently downstairs on the meeting room and reallocating space for the food bank and for cable committee. We're in the final stages. We only have punch list items left. If you haven't seen it, it will be open for business next week. We reconfigured the space. It looks like we're going to be able to accommodate at least 36 persons down there, which is just slightly less than we had before. I believe only 8 or 9 less. However, what we've done is we've created a secured room just for the food bank items. We've accommodated their racking system so that they can move the racks in and out of the room with ease to try to eliminate or reduce the amount of work that's needed to display the items when they operate the bank. But more importantly, what it did is it almost doubled the space of the cable office, or cable committee room. It's still in construction phase. That is going to be something that we can discuss down the road. And I'll obviously need the input of the cable committee for that. But as we said earlier, there is a desire to put in a studio area down there, and we now have allocated the space for that. So with that said, by next Wednesday, we should be able to start using the meeting room downstairs in earnest. And I would encourage, through the town administrator, to have all the various committees use that room exclusively. Because if the next part of my discussion is approved by the board tonight, I'd like to get started on that immediately. To your point earlier about Station 1, the fire chief and I have had discussions in the past. I did indicate to him that it was important. However, there were some logistical concerns here that we needed to work on. But as everyone knows, I love multitasking, so as soon as I feel comfortable enough, I'll start the dialogue with the fire chief on those things. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just say, I am, number one, blown away with how quickly the lower level was, the meeting space was completed. It looks beautiful. I commend our highway guys that have worked on this. Great job. I'm very, very happy with it, and I hope we will meet down there. Confirmed we can go live from downstairs, so if that is something that you're interested in, let me know.
I got a question on it, if I get some input. So anyhow, one of the cameras got removed in the TV, so we're gonna try to see if we can get that equipment going. At the time, we tried to put a bid in to basically do all the equipment over and go high def like we have, you know, in the selectman's office. But we were closing the books at the time, so there's a bid out there for $22,000, basically, that would take care of all the cameras, put in a flat screen up there, and really modernize what we have. So let's try it next week. We'll try, you know, if you think you're done down there, we'll try to fire up the equipment and see if we can get that other camera. I don't know if you really want to mount that camera to the wall since it's brand new. We go without it, you know. I don't want to. I think you did a great job down there. It looks awesome.
Thanks. I plan on mounting the camera tomorrow.
Okay.
I commend you for moving with getting new equipment, but that may take some time.
It probably
so
will.
I think the 2 cameras in the room are appropriate. The other thing that I'm planning on doing is taking the flat screen TV out of the planning office and mounting it where the analog TV was.
Nice.
So, yeah, so, okay, so that was my plan, and I know you and I haven't had discussions, but I knew you'd be on board with that, so.
Okay.
That should be happening tomorrow.
Speaking as a Lions member now, like we do the food pantry once a month down there, do we want to put any protective covering over that that table looks nice, by the way, that's downstairs now.
Yeah.
So,
I would encourage you to use some tablecloths or something, I'm not sure if you have.
I can bring it up at the Lions Club meeting, and we want some sort of, almost like a storage blanket to go over that, so we don't damage that
If
table.
anyone at home wants to donate one, they're looking for one, they'll need one about 12 feet long, about 7 feet wide, so.
I have a question about the two cameras, I apologize. Are they the cameras from before? They're newly purchased, and do they match these ones in here?
They will, because the cameras you got now are they look similar to this, but at 35 years old.
Okay.
And the console comes and goes sometimes, so it was it was like the third stage of redoing the equipment. So hopefully we'll get it out in the, in the fall meeting, we get a warrant to get that money, and we should be all set.
What's the seating capacity in the renovated meeting room now?
It's about 36, which is
It's
only,
44.
right, which is only 8 less than we had. And that does allow for a section that is AAB compliant, ADA compliant, and the aisleways are wide open. There's also an area for the presenters to show things, whereas before they used to stand in front of the door to the room. So I think it was well laid out. New tiles, new carpeting, new paint. Thank you for the support. I also think it is under budget, although I haven't been able to quantify that, but I'm pretty certain it's under budget.
Under budget.
Right.
We don't get to say that
I
much.
know, I love saying that.
Municipal government.
And to mimic on your words, I don't do this alone. I cannot do this without Tom Ferry and his crew, specifically Mike and Joe and the rest of the guys. So thank you all. It's truly a team effort.
I know we call it a renovation, and I understand it is, but like, I haven't seen the finished product, but I did see it last week, or maybe the week before. It is like a transformation, is what I would
The
call it.
lighting, like the lighting alone, it just blew me away.
It's like a modern office.
I
looks
didn't
nice.
realize how much the lighting
It's like a
would have
modern town hall.
impacted.
Exactly. But we don't want Old Town
50
Hall to be
even.
nicer.
One more question, where's the business workstation gonna go? I was just wondering about that. So we had that workstation for people come and go. Right now it's in the cable room in the back. Is that going back on the floor, or?
You getting ahead of me?
Oh, I'm sorry, go right ahead. I don't have the paperwork in front of me, I'm sorry.
Okay, so for everyone at home who can't see this, this is an existing and proposed layout for the remainder of the lower level, which is everything north of the wall that divides the meeting room, the table area, and the new food bank room. So this basically encompasses the restrooms, boiler room, vault, planning office, sewer, and various closets. So what I did was, as with every new project, we try to identify what the needs are, what the deficiencies are, and then I come up with what I think is a good layout, both from a working perspective and from a code perspective. So if you familiarize yourself with the existing and then you turn to the proposed lower level, you can see that the restrooms, boiler room, and vault all stay intact. However, as part of this phase, and it would probably be the latter part of this phase, the restrooms would be renovated. And they would be reconfigured slightly. They were originally designed for multiple fixture restrooms, however, they were too small. So along the years, fixtures have been removed, but now they're too large for single fixtures. So the town administrator and I talked extensively on what we can and cannot do to configure those restrooms and potentially save a lot of money by not relocating the existing network and server racks. So the consensus is that we are going to repetition the restrooms in such a way that creates an IT area where the server is located. It'll be conditioned,
I also would like, or I envision, that we'll have all of our good equipment that's surplus, extra screens, mice, et cetera, can all be in that room, so if somebody needs something, it's in one location. And then we'll still end up with 2 single-use handicap or AAB and AADA compliant bathrooms.
I do know, and Mr. Gale can follow up on this, that when we had the Jeff from the Office of Disability came around and gave us a quick look over of this town hall, there was some mistakes in the bathroom there, so I would ask that if you have an opportunity to speak with Mr. Gale and go over before you do the changes in the restrooms. And anything else that's downstairs. I walked with you earlier, I think everything was okay. Mr. Gale knows a lot more about this than I do,
Right.
so
Yep.
if he's been given an opportunity to take a look at it, it's
Okay, so, yeah, and I plan to do that. Restrooms, I'm not sure if everyone remembers, but next door, restrooms were the only thing that I had engineer drawings done for, to make sure that everything was where it needed to be, compliant, and that also works well when you're giving it to subcontractors, because there is pretty extensive plumbing work that will be required to get that done. So if everybody's following a plan, there's no mistakes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so we will be looking to do that same thing downstairs as well, and upstairs when we eventually get here, and any other town building that requires that. So with that said, the bulk of the reconfiguration will be to the existing sewer office, the entrance area, and to the planning, the current planning office. And in discussing that, we came up, we being the town administrator and I, and some of the members of the selectmen, that 3 departments, one department being planning and zoning, which would be combined like a land use department, would be in one, the largest of the spaces. The sewer department, not needing a conference table or a meeting space anymore, would be in a slightly smaller one. And then the accounting department would be relocated down to the lower level to free up space for another phase that would come out down the road to try to make some room in the collector's office, treasurer's office. So with that said, and knowing some other problems or concerns, the space has been reconfigured so that when you walk in the entrance door, you have approximately a 7-foot wide hallway, which is narrower than what's there now, in at least the first half, because that's wasted space when you walk in that area. But that hallway still exceeds accessibility requirements. And then you walk to another area, which is the hallway in the back, which is about the same width, maybe slightly less, which again meets accessibility requirements. But the biggest difference is going to be all of the departments' offices will be accessed through that main corridor, which is at the base of the stairs. And how I want to, or how I envision it, is that I don't want just a door in a wall. I want to do some glazing in the wall so that it lets light into the hallway and the hallway into the room and doesn't give people the effect of that tunnel vision when they look down a long hallway. I think it'll be more inviting to the public. I think it'll be more inviting to the employees. And I think the overall aesthetics will be pleasing. So the other 2 things that we need to do is we need to find a place for all the voting equipment that's at the base of the stairs, which shouldn't be in a stairwell. Unfortunately, I have no place for it. So I would create a new closet area, which is just inside the rear door. And thinking of my fellow team members on the highway department, they'll have a short jaunt off the truck, in the building, into a secured closet on the right-hand side for all the voting equipment. The chairman brought up a good point. There's a window there, so security might be an issue. We may have to look at reconfiguring that window area. I believe all the ballots right now are stored in the vault, so they wouldn't be in a closet. But we certainly want to make sure the machinery is secure.
I have a question since we're discussing closets. I really like this. There's currently where the accounting department will be, if the board approves this phase 2 plan, there are closets with items in them. What does that just become part of the accounting office now? Or will they still be closets, I guess?
So the closets will be absorbed by the accounting office and the town officials' kiosk, which I'll explain more in a minute. I believe there is a need for a closet. There's not a need for a row of closets. If you look in those closets, most of that stuff can be discarded or auctioned off as surplus. There is